Play at Novibet.
Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle in association with Novibet. As usual, I've Emma Nagle, Johnny Ward here. We're going to have a look back at Cheltenham and all the fun we had last week. Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, starting off, I suppose the first thing to look at is the Irish dominated again, not quite the way I thought they might have. 18-9 was the final figure. You couldn't have predicted that because it should have been 28 races, not 27. But even at that, I didn't think the British were going to have 9 winners. Emma, what did you make of that aspect of it alone?
Yeah, I thought they'd sure to get 7 or 8, given them all the handicaps. They might have got a little bit of a helping hand from the handicapper now in a couple of them, but like odds, laws, averages, they were always going to get 7 or 8. But maybe they did slightly better than expected. We're starting to miss Willie Mullins a small bit in the winners' enclosure when all the English winners are getting booted in. But I suppose it's better for the sport as a whole to see them get a fair share of them as well, I suppose.
Yeah, but I suppose the big thing here is they had plenty of winners. They had 9 winners, but the big races, the grade ones, 14 grade ones, 12 of them won by Irish trainers, only 2 by British. What about that, Johnny? There's been lots of talk about it the last few days anyway, about the dominance in that, and the BHA have come out and saying they need to change their strategy.
Yeah, extraordinary stuff from the BHA on the back of, really an utter irrelevance from the British trainers in the grade 1 races and the grade 2 races to an extent as well. But like the novice races, the Gold Cup, this was consistent with recent sort of Grand Nationals, albeit Corrick Ramler won, but the top echelons of the sport and the young horses coming up. There was, I hate the term perfect storm, but in terms of the Cheltenham this year, what befell Nicky Henderson was quite extraordinary. It rarely happens where you're so worried about your yards form. You take out horses of the caliber of Sergino and having already scratched Constitution Hill, and then take out John Bond, and really should have won the Queen Mother by default if he turned up, obviously. So you have that. You have Paul Nicholls, who increasingly kind of is running away from Cheltenham. The extraordinary decision made very quickly not to run Caldwell Potter at Cheltenham. I couldn't get my head around. He did win with Monmoral, but obviously he's not nowhere near targeting Cheltenham like he was. And then you have Dan Skelton, who emerged from a really, really bruising episode with the authorities only a week previously, where he got, in my mind, a fairly nominal fine for where he basically misled a syndicate purchasing a horse. Really, and Chris Cook spoke about this well in the race post yesterday. Really, really damaging stuff. But it was left to him to carry the can for the British trainers. And for the BHA to come out and say, yeah, like this isn't good. Basically, it's not good for racing on either side of the RSC is genuinely extraordinary. But people say it's cyclical. It's not cyclical at the moment. If you have prize money in Ireland that's kind of half funded by the government, and British racing, which is regressing at a rate of knots, where a lot of jumps meetings now with the field sizes, they look like Greyhound Bags meetings, like day in, day out. And Cheltenham was regressing into that, where we had 3 grade 1s on 3 grade 1 jumps races on one day at Cheltenham with an odds-on shot and no 3 each-way places. These are not attractive races for punters at all. I have to say I found the Wednesday with the cross-country race called off, and I was working. I found it really, really slow. 6 races over the goods of 4 hours. And the Cheltenham actually only started to feel like Cheltenham on Thursday, when British trainers started to have winners again and really didn't have this sort of dominant day. But I thought it was, all in all, a really damaging Cheltenham for the sport.
Well, if you take that, just look at some of the horses you say that didn't turn up for varying reasons. Obviously, the Nicky Henderson ones, there's obviously a problem in the yard, but we could have had Constitution Hill, John Bond, Sergino. We could have possibly had Caldwell Potter as well, as you mentioned. Like, they're 4 potential winners for the British as well, in grade 1 contests as well. So it would have leveled the playing field quite a bit if those horses had been there. What do you think, Emma? Is it as one-sided as we're thinking it is?
No, I don't think so. And it's kind of a case of calling for help, but at the same time, like you mentioned, all those horses didn't take their go. Obviously, Constitution Hill, there was reasons for that, but some of them you'd imagine could have gone there, but they're going to Aintree instead for an easier target. All would have been right there in the mix. I mean, the Supreme was, I suppose, a lot more open when Ballyburn went to the Ballymore. So I don't know, the whole thing about the Irish dominance. I think Patrick spoke very well about Willie after he won the 100 winner. Like, Willie went out and found these owners. It's not a case of he wasn't lucky. He went out and worked for it. And I don't know that people are saying there's not enough money being spent in Britain, but I imagine if you go through the figures of it, you'd imagine the top English trainers are spending just as much as the top Irish trainers would be on these expensive horses. And there's a lot more to training horses than just getting them there on the day fit and ready. It's a whole operation, and Willie has perfected that. Gordon has, and Henry have. I just think they're ahead of the English trainers, to be perfectly honest.
I definitely don't think that's right, though, Emma, in the sense that the British owner just doesn't seem to be there. The big British owner just does not seem to be there anymore, and it was inevitable that the Townend mare that went on sale on was the Wednesday night, that it was practically inevitable that she came back to Ireland. The British owner, as much as you can say, Caldwell Potter was bought, he was bought by a syndicate of owners, and Alex Ferguson, for all the money he has, he owned a quarter of the horses that won at Cheltenham. These horses in Irish point to points that are basically they are the really hot property, or the horses come from France. There just does not seem to be this big British owner, and I was interested. A trainer brought 3 horses over to the Tats Cheltenham sale before Cheltenham. I think one had even won a bumper. Three Irish from a very good source in Ireland, expecting to get at least 100 grand for each of them. Couldn't get 100 grand for any of them. And he would make the point that the British owner simply is not there. I spoke to Ted Walsh about this pre-Cheltenham. The owners are in Ireland now, and if they're not running their horses in Ireland, they're Irish themselves. And that's a major worry. And I don't know where they're going to appear from if they're just not there anymore.
Yeah, we 12 Irish trained Grade 1 winners. 8 of them are owned by Irish people, 2 of them British people, and 2 of them by an American, Rich Ritchie and his wife or whatever, which you could imagine they could send a horse anywhere. But like, it's not as if the British owners are en masse coming to Ireland, which is a perception that's out there. That's the problem for British racing is, all their owners have horses in Ireland. That's not quite true. Certainly not at the top level. It's not, at least. But moving on, looking at the other side of this as well, we talked about this, the Pressbury Cup beforehand and what the score might be and everything else. The bookmakers bet on this each year. They're betting 20 to 1 on Ireland to win the Pressbury Cup, which is fair enough. It's a reflection of the dominance, I suppose. But we talked about this in our last show. Should they not be betting on Willie Mullins versus the other Irish versus the British? Because that would have been 9-9-9, a 3-way dead heat between them. That's a much better betting proposition, isn't it? Just if you're going to be betting on which country does better, why not do it that way? What do you think, Johnny?
It's actually remarkable that came up. We had 27 races, obviously not 28 because the cross country was called off. But like I was making the point beforehand, Willie Mullins versus the rest of the Irish trainers would be a close enough match. Willie Mullins against the British might be a close enough match. The fact that it was 9v9v9 is absolutely staggering. And you know, the fact that you wrote about this in your blog as well, Vinny, I thought it was very interesting. We should be conscious of the fact that it's 3 or 4 trainers really absolutely dominating, and beyond Willie Mullins dominating in Ireland, where most trainers didn't really get a look in on the podium. But you know, our British racing did well to get to 9 winners. It didn't look great at all after 2 days, but you can't lose sight of the fact that British horses were practically irrelevant in the big races day after day.
Yeah, well, that's something you touch on that I mentioned in my blog. We'd 53 Irish trained horses finished first, second, or third at Cheltenham, but 48 of them were trained by just 4 people. And we're seeing this day in, day out at home here. Every maiden, every major race is like we saw the Dublin Racing Festival. Willie won all 7 Grade 1s, but sure, if he didn't, it would have been Gordon or Gavin Cromwell or Henry de Bromhead. There is no one else out there, is there, at that level, with the exception of the odd horse Joseph O'Brien still throws a jump racing. And then, of course, we've Emmett Mullins as well. He's a law unto himself too. But, you know, very small trainers in a national hunt perspective compared to the big 4. So it's all about that dominance then, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose that's kind of in England as well. I think small trainers are struggling. It's probably more so to do with rising costs over the last few years. Like, I mean, I suppose, let's say the smaller trainer, for example, like if I train 10 horses there now, I'm not really going to be going out competing Grade 1s against Willie Mullins realistically. So he's not a massive problem for me, except when going to bumpers and maiden hurdles, I suppose. It's small trainers are kind of finding it hard to stay in existence because of the rising costs and the lack of staff. And I suppose, like, you know, any small trainer gets a good horse now and they're selling it straight away. You have to sell it because you can't stay in the game without it. And you're selling it to the likes of Gavin Cromwell, Gordon Elliott, Willie Mullins, or maybe even to the UK. So that's probably why, I mean, there isn't much of a spread of, you know, the small trainers just really can't afford to keep those good horses and get to the level at Cheltenham now, which is a pity, I suppose. And like even when they could get them to that level, maybe it might have been in the handicaps, but like I think we kind of saw last week that the way Irish and English horses are being handicapped now is very different, and I think they're going to have a good look at that next year for the festival, because slapping these penalties on Irish horses now just doesn't seem to be fair anymore, especially on the seasoned handicappers, because they seem to have no chance whatsoever of winning a Cheltenham Festival handicap now. You have to kind of have a young up-and-coming horse who could still have something on the handicapper, where like if you have a 7 or 8 year old there who's coming to the festival off the back of some good runs in handicaps, he really has no chance.
Yeah, that does seem to be a trend, all right. There's no doubt about that. One other thing to look at there as well is just around the winners in general is Paul Townend, 6 winners. He's leading rider again. He's obviously very underrated still, isn't he? Because he doesn't get the plaudits that the likes of Ruby would have got when he was riding 3 winners at the festival rather than the man who's riding 6. But I thought one interesting thing is he had no seconds and no thirds at the festival. I'm sure it's the first time a leading rider at the festival didn't have any placed horses, just winners. What about that, Johnny? He's very selective in what he rides too.
Yeah, he's very selective. Maybe he's right as well. It makes him, avoid injury a bit more, and he's able to pick and choose because he rides in the top races. And I'd say maybe the riding Absurd might even have given him as much as a kick as anything because of the way that he negotiated passage. I had that horse given no chance on the ground. I really thought he had no chance for Paul to manage that. You could see from the interviews that Paul gave since the Gold Cup, he's just can't get the smile off his face racing at the weekend, and he was absolutely outstanding to have. There's so much pressure, massive pressure on him because he's almost expected to have half a dozen winners. One of the highlights of what Paul did this week for me was actually pulling up El Fabiolo, because he looked after the horse. He had to make a decision. You see horses that especially in Cheltenham, where it's like we're in a championship race here, and Fabiola has so much ability, he could still have practically won the race at that moment in your head. But he looked after the horse. I thought in terms of, I have my clashes with racing in terms of the animal welfare stuff, because I think racing in general is exceptional with animal welfare, but there are aspects of it obviously that can be challenged. And I thought for Paul Townend to do that with El Fabiolo, looking after the horse in the big race of the day at a 1-5 shot, wherever he was really outstanding. He's an exceptional rider, and to do it kind of to burn the candle several ways really in terms of the ride he gave Absurd. It was his festival of deliverance. And I don't want to take away from Paul Townend or Willie as well. Willie reaching the 100 and being able to kind of enjoy it. And this, as Emma says, like getting to where they are after the Jigginstown losses and all that, and Jigginstown eventually coming back, and Willie, how outstanding he is. I don't want to take away from their achievements. And Paul Townend was outstanding this week.
Yeah, you talk about his welfare as well around the El Fabiolo, Vincent. I agree 100% that he made the right decision, and it was a very quick call he made too. He didn't sort of carry on for another 150 yards or another couple of fences to see how the horse was. He made that decision immediately, which is what you want a top guy like him to do. The other thing with that is, we always talk about this horse's 5-star treatment they get, these race horses. Well, it's nearly 6-star now. As I see Hewitt, he has a TV and all in his stable now. I see he watches the racing and everything. It's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. He was a horse you missed during the week, Emmy. You'd like to see him run, would you?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, the way the round went, they made the right decision. He wouldn't have, I suppose, done himself justice. On it came up quite soft in Gold Cup Day, but yeah, that's a video of him watching the telly at home. Hopefully he'll dry up a bit now before the Grand National, because I think he'll win a massive race in that, and probably no harm going there fresh either.
Yeah. Well, what about go through some of the races themselves? Most impressive winners from the week. Ballyburn is one for me. I've never seen nothing like him. He could be a real star going forward. But what really impressed you, Any horses in particular? I
suppose on day one, Gaelic Warrior was definitely probably one of the best of the week. Even just to get him, talking about Paul Townend and really to get him after that performance in Dublin Racing Festival, I thought they were half mad going to the Arkle, to be honest. And I think, did he have the hood on first time? I don't know, was that made the difference? Or Paul Townend just made him look so easy, he's a horse who has had so many, he's so many kind of question marks about him, I suppose. He goes right, and he just, I don't know, he disappointed so badly behind Fact of Foil, but yeah, he was brilliant. And Willie mentioned he could go for the Champion Chase, the Ryanair, or the Gold Cup. You probably won't get a more versatile horse in all of racing. So yeah, he was definitely one of them. And Corbett's Cross, I thought, was brilliant as well. At the last race of the day on Tuesday. Pity that he didn't go to the RSA, I'd say, but look, I suppose same owner, they probably wanted to split them, but I'd be really interested to see what he could do in that Gold Cup division next year. I think he's a horse who probably just put it all together on the day. Yeah, he looked like a right machine. Like you mentioned, Ballyburn, Fact of Foil, brilliant. Yeah, Galloping Deschamps probably my highlight of the week though. Winning the Gold Cup back to back. He just is special horse, and a special mention to Better Days Ahead, winning the Martin Pipe as well. We bred him,
Yes.
so I had
Fantastic.
to get that one in there. I think Gordon said it was his favorite winner of the week as well. Bective Stud getting their first Cheltenham Festival winner, which is great because they've invested so much money in the sport as well. So hopefully first to many of them for them.
Yeah, another one then is I Know the Way You're Thinking. That was some performance. Great week as well for Derek O'Connor. What you make of that, Johnny? He's a hell of a rider, isn't he, in those amateur contests?
Yeah, he had a great week. He really settled Corbett's Cross in the sense that I suppose it was just something of a doubt about him. And I know the way you're thinking, his patience was quite admirable because he didn't get himself into a great position early on with his jumping and all that. And utterly extraordinary performance in a handicap. I mean, if you've kind of been backing that horse all year, you'll probably be thinking you were on the right horse, wrong day. Just a couple of other things, like Emma mentioned Gaelic Warrior there. Like when Gaelic Warrior took on Factifile in that much derided race at Leopardstown, you were actually being treated as they go to the post to one of the greatest match races ever in jumps racing. Two unbelievably outstanding talents in a match race, and it just turned into a mess. But if Gaelic Warrior had actually half behaved himself, we could have had a race at the eights. You have two extraordinary horses there. Factifile being spoken of as a Gold Cup horse. No doubt Gaelic Warrior could be a Gold Cup horse going the other way. He's well able to get 3 miles. He's an outstanding talent. And Ballyburn, I suppose, was the main one. One thing for me, he was in terms of the performance, he was the main one. The one takeaway I would be kind of cognizant of was I thought Galloping Deschamps had a very hard race in the Gold Cup, which he had to have given the performance of Jerry Kilome and also how bad the ground was. It was the most testing Cheltenham ground you really ever get. So that's one thing I would take on forward into Punchestown and be just a little bit wary of him at Punchestown because he did have a tough race. He had the loose horse to deal with. And it was a proper slog. And you saw how legless they finished pretty much the champion chase over 2 miles. But there were some extraordinary performances for sure throughout the week.
Yeah, one race I have to say I really enjoyed was the Turner's Novice Chase. Grey Dawning and Ginny's Destiny, 2 English horses, but God, they put it to each other from a long way out, didn't they? Just forcing that gallop and going. And that's like, it's like Cheltenham of old. I thought it was just one of those cracking contests with 2 really good horses. They could be certainly in the mix, the pair of them as well, against Gaelic Warrior and Factifile over the next year or two. Let's hope we see them all intact and back again. And we might even see them sooner than that. One other thing, just a little thing there. Emma, tell me what you think of this. Constitution Hill, we know he missed Cheltenham. He stayed over hurdles this season. The idea was they thought he might be able to be the first horse to win 4 champion hurdles and so on. Is there a chance he might go over fences now?
I wouldn't think so. No, I'd say definitely not after what's happening this year. Like if he gets back to, hopefully he's going to go to Punchestown out at the end of the season. But I'd say they're going to probably mind him. Probably
Can they mind him any more than they have? Yeah.
If possible, he'll be going out wearing cotton wool around his legs, and I can't see it happening. It was interesting. Willie mentioned doing the Dawn one with Ballyburn though. If he could win a champion hurdle next year and then go for a Gold Cup, Willie would be one who I'd say would be more likely to do it than Nicky Henderson. I'd say he'll probably take the cautious approach next year, I'd imagine, after such a kind of an interrupted year this year.
Yeah, will he be wanting to emulate his dad with Dawn Run? That'll be the thing, wouldn't it? Yeah, look, there's fantastic things to look forward to. The other thing, Johnny, you messaged me there shortly before we came on air with that piece that Racing TV published by Dr. Richard Newland. There's some crazy stuff in that, isn't there?
Yeah, I'd actually be wary of commenting too much on the remarks that he made, because I'd advise you to read the piece. It's after a bank holiday weekend, I keep waking up thinking today is Monday or whatever, and tomorrow is Wednesday, and half the week is gone instead. But this wasn't something I was expecting on a Tuesday morning. It definitely reflects, I guess, a feeling of exasperation among the British trainers as well, where this was not a good Cheltenham, really, in terms of what Cheltenham should be going forward. And if you're watching, an Irish trainer first 5 home in the novice hurdle, which I think he'd 17 runners still left in the week before, it's kind of it's not where British racing should be. But I mean, I suppose I just advise you to read this article yourself and come up with your own conclusions.
Besides some of the relatively controversial things he said one thing sounds madcap is talking about having English racing just for English or British racing just for British horses, not allowing the Irish over, maybe allow them go to Cheltenham. That's mad stuff, is it?
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, Like when you think about it, like we love to see the English runners coming over here for our big meetings. It's like they don't come over enough is kind of what we're saying. Like to think like it's crazy. Like you wrote a blog about a couple of weeks ago about like 20 years ago at Cheltenham, the Irish are having 4 winners. It wasn't a tragedy for the sport then when the British were dominating. So why is it a tragedy for the sport now because the Irish are doing better? Like I've no doubt the British will come back at us and even it up at very least at some stage. So I it's the comments made were really hard to believe. He has come out with similar stuff before, and I was surprised it was published, to be honest, because there's some absolutely mad stuff in there.
Emma touches on something as well, Vinny. Like this needs to be pointed out. It was like Galway hurlers. I think it became an obsession with Galway hurlers to win another All Ireland because they were so far away from doing it. It's become an obsession maybe with Mayo footballers. But in order for Galway hurlers to do it, or Limerick, as they've had to, Limerick kind of got investment, obviously, but you just had to try to match Kilkenny and to a lesser extent Tipperary, but you had to really raise your game. I think Cheltenham winners became something of an obsession for Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott and the likes of Henry de Bromhead, who, by the way, had an outstanding week as well. And I think they really, really raised their game. British racing plateaued, then regressed, and this is why we have this situation. This was down to Irish trainers and Irish owners really, really improving their stock, improving the quality of their horses, improving maybe the way they're trained, and looking at Cheltenham as the holy grail, which I don't think it is for a lot of British trainers anymore.
And what about the crowds? That's the other thing. They're well down. We crowds in general in Ireland have been down for years. We know that there's been about 8% a year that they've been dropping for the last few years, and everything else. A little bit of a pullback because of after COVID when people decided to get out and about again. But Cheltenham saw something similar. 280,000 people went to the festival in 2022, the post-pandemic festival. Those numbers have dropped by 50,000 this year. That's an awful lot of people that have disappeared, isn't it? Like you think you get them in the gate, they had a fun time 2 years ago, and 50,000 of them haven't turned up this year. What's that about, Johnny? Is it about ticket pricing? Is it about the cost of living crisis? Is it about hotel prices? Is there something else at play?
I'm part of the problem here, Vinny. I generally go racing now when I'm working. During the pandemic, I completely got out of the habit of going racing, obviously, as we all did. And it was interesting in terms of football. The League of Ireland bounced out of the COVID pandemic in an extraordinarily good way, where people were desperate to go to a football game. By contrast in racing, I think people have kind of gotten out of the habit of going. And I found as I got older, I only got a smartphone I only got a mobile phone when I was about 20, but my attention span is poor. If you were to tell me, if I lived in Cheltenham and it was, say, 75 sterling to go to that race card on the Wednesday or whatever it was, would I go or would I stay at home? And if I lived in Cheltenham, I'd be like, geez, 75 quid to see like these kind of really long odds on shots running over in a 6-race card over 4 hours, where I can relax at home and not spend $7.50 for a bad pint of Guinness, not have to queue at the bars, not have to struggle to get out of the car park if that's the case, not have to kind of get around a really crowded racecourse. Maybe it's me getting old, but I can see why Cheltenham isn't an easy sell. And it was interesting anecdotally, like I didn't really know that many mates at all from Ireland who'd actually gone over this year. And I speak to people deeply involved in racing every day who hadn't gone. I know some people who went to Spain for the week and all of that, but like the idea of me, I going to Cheltenham as a racing fan now, notwithstanding all the costs of paying in and having to pay for accommodation and all of that, it wouldn't appeal to me at all, to be honest. Like it wouldn't. I might go over for a day, maybe, but to go over for 3 or 4 days, and then when you look at the British economy in a wider scale post Brexit, a lot of people simply don't have the money to do this. They simply do not have the money, and I thought this was really damning as well at the Jockey Club. I was given the name of a guy to contact who was basically the PR guy for the Jockey Club. I said, how are sales? How are Irish v British sales? No response whatsoever. This was Monday or Tuesday, got no response. And I think British racing is very insecure about things, but racing at that price level for me is not a very easy sell when you have so many uncompetitive races as well.
Yeah, well, the Jockey Club has come out and said that basically their ordinary ticket sales were down, but their corporate and hospitality ones were holding up as well as ever. So is it going to become like the Manchester United thing with the prawn sandwiches? Is that what Cheltenham ends up being? It's not for the ordinary guy at all. It's only for the corporates and the well-to-dos. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, I don't know. It's no surprise the tickets were down, to be honest. Like I've only been to the festival once actually myself. I've been to the November meeting a couple of times, but I mean, like the value from one you're getting at, like just touching on what Johnny said again, like you can spend the same amount of money going to Spain to watch the racing for the week, and you'll come back probably with a lot more money in your pocket at the end of it as well. I was just listening to some stories of people who went there during the week as well. Like the whole experience just seemed to be like not what you'd expect for the amount you're paying at like the premier race meeting of the whole year. Like to hear the stories of the car parks, even like you're paying, like I couldn't believe you had to pay 30 quid to park at a race course in the first place. I don't think there's any race course in Ireland that charges for parking, and then you're paying 30 quid to park in a field and get stuck there for 2 hours and get towed out by a tractor. I mean, I was at a point to point on Sunday, and like they're going to tow you out with the tractor for free, but at Cheltenham you pay you man 20 quid or whatever it was to pull your car out of the car park. You already paid 30 quid for it. Was like it just sounds, yeah, like I think that's probably one of the best things about racing in Ireland. It's not segregated into different sections. You know, you pay, was it over £100 for the ticket where you get, I don't know, all the best access in Cheltenham, whereas, you know, we go racing in Ireland and you can go wherever you want for your whatever your entry fee is. And I think that's why a lot of the UK crowd came over to the DRF, because they were saying, you know, you come over to the DRF, pay your, I think it was a €60 early bird ticket for 2 days, let's say, and you're seeing a lot of the same horses who are running at Cheltenham, but you're getting a much better value for your money, a 2-day kind of pack full of grade ones. Yeah, I think it's mostly down to pricing. I think the interest around Cheltenham were still there this year. Like I know a lot of people who took the week off work but just watched it from home or went on holidays to watch it. Like the same as Johnny, I didn't actually know a whole pile of people who went for the full week. So yeah, it's a worry, and they'll have to change it next year, I'd imagine.
Change what? Change the pricing?
The pricing,
yeah. 4 days, Vinny, was wrong. Like 4 days was absolutely the wrong call. And like Lossiemouth's performance was great, but I would have preferred her taking on State Man. And if I owned Lossiemouth, I would have gone for the Mayor's Hurdle anyway. It's easier. But like, it was good comment by Richie Forrester before the festival where he said you can't go to Cheltenham, you can't swing a cat without hitting an odds-on shot this week. There's going to be that many of them. And like Cheltenham is not designed for having a scatter of odds-on shots or races that allow horses to escape each other. And that's what it's become. It's basically eating itself alive at this stage, where you think of Brave Inca, Archibald, Hardy uses these amazing clashes. Like the championship races were such a letdown in terms of their competitive nature. And even the Gold Cup has an odds-on shot for all that. It was a very good Gold Cup. And the Champion Chase for me was really a farce of a contest in the end, where you have two horses who are running to like a rating of 100 really getting up the hill. They were that tired in a race that utterly fell apart, lack of numbers, and then the odds-on shot goes. And as the Champion Chase goes, this has happened before, but Cheltenham can survive if you like odds-on shot after odds-on shot and 3 odds-on shots in the 3 graded jumps races on day 2.
Well, one last thing to look at here, just from my point of view, I just thought it was worth a discussion to some level, see what you guys think. But diversity and inclusion. Over the course of the week, we'd 1 woman trained a winner, and we'd 1 female jockey had winners. And everybody's white. What's that about, Emma? Is there any other major sport in the world where every single participant, the audience, everyone involved is white? I can't think of another major sport.
Yeah, I suppose it's a funny one. You know, obviously in different jurisdictions of racing, everyone isn't white. There's a bit more diversity within the jockeys and stuff. But I suppose it's kind of a strange sport in a way, because I suppose there is barrier to entry in a way. Like a young person there who's living in a town, like the odds of them becoming a jockey is very low. Whereas like in other sports, you know, you go down and buy a ball in your sports shop, and you know you could probably become a soccer player. You're not going to go down and buy a pony and put it in the garden and start riding around the place. Suppose it's a bit different to other sports in that way. Yeah, I mean, you'd imagine like in 20 years the scene of racing will be different. And like you mentioned about women, I suppose it's probably a kind of a changing time, I suppose, in racing at the moment for women. Like you see, like if you watch a lady riders race now compared to like even 10, 15 years ago, like the standard is so much higher. Like a lot of girls right now, you wouldn't know if it was a girl or a man riding the horse, which is, you know, I think what you kind of aim to be, like Rachel Blackmore. Like you wouldn't say, oh, that's a woman riding the horse. And I think like maybe in 10 years time there'll be a lot more female riders competing at the highest level in Cheltenham, because like now there's a lot of very good lady rider amateurs in Ireland. There isn't too many professionals, probably more so in England, But there was like I think Lily Pinchin second in a handicap at the festival. Like she's a very good rider, and I'd imagine it's changing times, especially with the women. It might take more time with the other things you were mentioning, but hopefully in 20 years' time it could be different. It could be different, hopefully.
Yeah, but you go back, it must be 15 solid years ago. We'd Nina Carberry and Katie Walsh flying the flag for female riders. And then out of that, to some level, Rachel Blackmore appears out of it, and Bryony Frost to some degree as well. But it hasn't really kicked on, has it? We're still looking at a festival where it's Rachel or nobody when it comes to the female riders in general.
Yeah, I suppose Rachel kind of led the like Katie and Nina were amateur. I suppose like Rachel turning professional was she was like the first really successful female professional, which probably maybe what the sport needed a bit. Like there's been a good few really successful female amateurs, but maybe if a few of the young amateur girls there's plenty of them that will be well capable of turning professional, and hopefully maybe like Rachel leading that path and silhouetting Cheltenham winners. She's right there with the best of them. So hopefully a few of them might follow her lead.
Well, actually, this is something really that went completely over my head because I wasn't really watching the racing at Down Royal, but I was at Downpatrick when Anna McGuinness rode her first winner. It was actually a walk in the park horse that James Lamb came on and won at a horse called Feast. I think won it like 100, 150 to 1. And I interviewed Anna that day, and like to see the joy in her face. She's a local girl riding out, doing this or that, and rode a beautiful race on a complete rag in the race. And she posted up that she'd her first winner as a pro at Down Royal. And like I've said this before, I thought the likes of Jodie Townend would easily have had a very good career as a professional. But a lot of the female riders make a decision that it's a better life in the amateur ranks. But Rachel, like, I want to mention Rachel as well. She was at my cousins went to Thurles last week, and Rachel, having ridden a horse who was beaten, went out of her way to pose for a photo with my cousins, two young girls who came over from America, and she couldn't have been a better ambassador in that little moment with my American cousins. But she's also done wonders, I think, for female riders to think, I can do this. And I was delighted to see that Anna had turned pro, went completely over my head. Brilliant girl, and I really, really wish her the best in what's a tough game.
Oh, it is a tough game, isn't it? At every level of it, it's a tough game. It's even tough from the punting point of view as well, but there you go. Anyway, we've gone through most of it. We shall come back again next week. Hopefully we can talk a little bit more about the flat racing as well, which started off in the Curragh yesterday, quite successfully for those who were there, I'm sure. And we will keep it going all through the year. Listen, thanks for watching, and do gamble responsibly, and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Bye for now.